This episode of The Young Turks is brought to you by FreshBooks Online Invoicing.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, this morning, the Obama White House releases the long-form birth certificate. Not the short form, not the mid-form, but the long form. Oh my God. The world has changed. But not only did they release it, here's an interesting part. President Obama, who did not have to come out and speak on this, they were already releasing it to reporters, decided to come into the press room and speak on it for 5 minutes. And he was not happy about the situation. Let's go to the president.
We provided additional information today about the site of my birth. This issue has been going on for two and a half years now. I think it started during the campaign. Over the last 2.5 years, I have watched with bemusement. I've been puzzled at the degree to which this thing just kept on going. We've had every official in Hawaii, Democrat and Republican, every news outlet that has investigated this, confirm that, yes, in fact, I was born in Hawaii, August 4th, 1961, in Kapi'olani Hospital. Normally, I would not comment on something like this, because obviously there's a lot of stuff swirling in the press at any given day, and I've got other things to do. But 2 weeks ago, when the Republican House had put forward a budget that will have huge consequences potentially to the country, and when I gave a speech about my budget and how I felt that we needed to invest in education and infrastructure and making sure that we had a strong safety net for our seniors, even as we were closing the deficit, during that entire week, the dominant news story wasn't about these huge monumental choices that we're going to have to make as a nation. It was about my birth certificate. And that was true on most of the news outlets that were represented here. Now, I know that there's going to be a segment of people for which, no matter what we put out, this issue will not be put to rest. But I'm speaking to the vast majority of the American people, as well as to the press. We do not have time for this kind of silliness. We've got big problems to solve, and I'm confident we can solve them, but we're going to have to focus on them, not on this.
Bartunde Thurston, who wrote about this and had a very powerful video about this on jackandjillpolitics.com. And he said, look, this is obviously racial, right, as we have discussed here on the Young Turks. And as I did a huge segment on MSNBC on it with Reverend Al Sharpton. And I went further than Reverend Sharpton. I thought it was flat out racist, questioning his academic career, the whole birther nonsense, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. But Bartunde made a good point, which is, look, this has historic tradition that, asking for African Americans' papers, whether it was the voting pool, polls, I should say, Jim Crow, et cetera, and he lays out a very good case for it. And so the president shouldn't have to prove he's American. My God, he's the president, and they're still asking him for his papers. So it's so terribly demeaning and, sinking down to the level of having to address this is terrible, right? And so where do I come out on it? Look, I'm not as upset as some progressives simply because I'm used to this. This is what the president does. He's aloof. He tries to stay above things, and then when he gets conservative criticism, he responds, right? Does he ever respond by taking action when he gets progressive criticism? I've almost never seen it, right? Well, once or twice, okay? So I'm not blown away by that. Now, what should the president have done? Look, I don't have a strong opinion on this in terms of whether he should have released it 2 years ago or 2 years later or 2 months later, but I do have a strong opinion on one specific thing. You shouldn't have done it now. And I'll tell you why. I know he thinks it's a distraction, et cetera, right? But it allows Trump to crow. And he did, of course. He came out and said he bragged about how he got this done and he got this issue resolved. And it was all because of him and how proud he was. And it made it seem as if the president is responding because of the criticism that Trump brought up. It almost makes it appear to be more valid than it was. Now, at the same time, don't lose track of the fact that this is terribly embarrassing for all those goofy, ridiculous, idiotic Republicans who said, "Oh, we don't know where he's from. Why doesn't he just produce the birth certificate?" Like Sarah Palin over and over on Fox News Channel. On Fox News, they mentioned this so-called scandal over 50 times. Okay, their anchors did. And the list goes on. And there was all the Republican leaders, Boehner, Cantor, etc. They were all on tape. We again showed it on my MSNBC show at 6 o'clock. And all of them saying, I guess I take him at his word, but, it'd be, why doesn't he just settle the issue, etc. So they all bought into it. They all went in. And then now you see, of course, there's the birth certificate. It was there all along, as the other version of it showed clearly, as the people that maintain these records in Hawaii said over and over again. It was a manufactured nonsense. I guess what bothers me about the media coverage of it a little bit is that in the old days, when they had these goofy theories about Vince Foster being killed by the Clintons, etc., it was considered gross and some, thing that really fringe, ridiculous people did. Now it's gotten so big that, in a poll, a Gallup poll, 24% of Americans believe that the president was not born in the U.S., simply not born. Another 19% said that they weren't sure. That's why the president had to respond to it. So it's in a funny turnaround here. I think I have more sympathy for the president in this situation, although I disagree with his timing, than some other progressives do. So, look, he was in a tough spot because you got to deal with these lunatics all the time. But I think if you're in the Republican Party, you're in a tougher spot because those lunatics are your leaders. And one of them has to run against President Obama. And are you really going to get a majority of the country to sign on to people who push this kind of nonsense?
If you're a freelancer or running your own business, you probably don't like managing your invoicing. FreshBooks is an easy-to-use online service that takes the pain out of invoicing. It will literally save you time, get you paid faster, and make you look professional. With FreshBooks, you can easily create and email invoices that your clients can view online, save as a PDF, or pay immediately with PayPal and most other payment systems. Features like automated payment reminders, time tracking, and their mobile app make invoicing easier than ever. The best thing about FreshBooks is that getting started is completely free. Sign up for a free account and send a few invoices. FreshBooks likes TYT so much that they're giving away a birthday cake each week to someone that signs up from the show. All you have to do is create a new account and enter TYT in the How Did You Hear About Us section. And no, it doesn't need to be your birthday to win.